Okay, folks, this is the drill. I'm Ron, and welcome to Storytime. Facile formulas, catchy slogans, 10-step programs, and quick fixes too often dominate today's management training programs. But in organizations, as in all of life, human behavior is seldom predictable, and business dilemmas do not easily lend themselves to gimmicks or simplistic answers. In Management of the Absurd, psychologist, educator, and former CEO Richard Farson presents a series of management paradoxes designed to challenge conventional wisdom and encourage managers to re-examine their assumptions about effective leadership. Chapter 6. Most problems that people have are not problems. One of the most valuable lessons among many valuable lessons I learned from philosopher Abraham Kaplan is to distinguish between a problem and a predicament. Problems can be solved, predicaments can only be coped with. Most of the affairs of life, particularly the most intimate and important ones such as marriage and child-rearing, are complicated, inescapable dilemmas, predicaments where no options look very good or better than any other. I believe that is true of management as well. A problem is created by something going wrong, by mistake, defect, disease, or bad experience. When we find the cause, we can correct it. A predicament, however, paradoxical as it may seem, is more likely to be created by conditions that we highly value. This is why we can only cope with it. Take crime, for example. We think of crime as a problem and are always looking for its root causes, such as childhood experiences that may have produced a criminal mind. We would prefer it to be a simple matter of cause and effect. So we try to prove that crime comes from such sources as pornography or watching violence on television. Instead, absurdly, crime exists mainly because of aspects of our society we wouldn't think of giving up. Affluence, urbanization, mobility, freedom, materialism, individual liberty, progress. Social ills are such as employment and poverty undoubtedly play a part, but there are major societies with poverty far greater than ours that have virtually no crime. In America, as paradoxical as it may sound, crime is associated with the developments that we think of as advancement. It even comes from efforts to control it. Prisons, for example, tend to harden and train criminals so that they are likely to commit more serious offenses when they leave. Thus, a predicament is often made worse when we treat it as a problem. A larger frame. Most people, especially those who inhabit the lower levels of organizations, think of themselves as problem solvers, and to a great extent they are. They size up a situation, break it down into its component parts, and then address each component one at a time. As they go up the ladder and become executives, however, they deal increasingly with predicaments, not problems. The best executives soon discover that purely analytical thinking is inadequate. Predicaments require interpretive thinking. Dealing with a predicament demands the ability to put a larger frame around a situation, to understand it in its many contexts, to appreciate its deeper and often paradoxical causes and consequences. Alas, predicaments cannot be handled smoothly. And that was Chapter 6. Most problems that people have are not problems. And I'm going to go ahead and, since that was a short chapter, and I'm going to go ahead and read Chapter 8, and that will finish Section 2. Chapter 8, we think that we invent technology, but technology also invents us. The automobile has created not just modern cities, but also their opposite, suburbs. What it once made possible, the separation of commercial centers from residential centers, from recreational centers from industrial centers, it now makes necessary. The automobile has also become one of the leading causes of injury and death. The existence of automobiles has changed our courtship patterns, our sexual practices, and especially our environment. It perfectly demonstrates the powerful impact of technology on our lives. 25% of our economy is tied up with the automotive business. If we count not just the manufacture of automobiles, but the roads and services designed to accommodate them, we think we invented the automobile, but in fact, the automobile has also invented us. For example, the automobile has added burdens to parenthood which no other society in history has ever had to cope with. Suburban parents must now chauffeur their children everywhere. In the past, because there were so few automobiles, children could explore the community in relative safety. But the existence of automobiles has made leaving their own yards quite dangerous. One could say then that the automobile has led to a whole new strategy of parenthood. Fenced backyards, and the notion that we must keep our children under surveillance at all times. This responsibility was never a part of parenthood when children could move about safely. The automobile has thus contributed to increased feelings of anxiety and frustration in parents. When these feelings are coupled with feelings of isolation, which in some cases can be traced to the suburbanization created by the automobile, they often lead to violence, helping to create a level of child abuse in our society that is one of the highest in the world. So incredibly, we find the automobile influencing parenthood in a way no one would ever have dreamed. The design of organizations. Technology also always invents us. Organizations, for example, are shaped by the available communication technologies. Our earliest organizations, the tribes, had to conduct their business essentially within earshot. As it became possible to send message over a distance, more diverse social organizations evolved. Mail and postal systems enabled centralized and business organizations to come into being. The telephone and telegraph fostered the international organization. The computer has created new, virtually officeless organizations. Business communications must now extend beyond the traditional geographic limits of the building that houses the organization to include employees in the field, as well as clients, customers, consultants, and even competitors. McDonnell Douglas, in reinventing its communication system, had to include its principal competitor, Lockheed. To compete at one level, McDonnell Douglas had to collaborate at another. Computer networking creates communities unlike any we have known before. Although the members may never be in the same room with each other, they develop strong working relationships and powerful bonds of friendship. This results partly from the fact that technology invites people to speak more openly and candidly than they would in ordinary meetings. Relationships can become as intimate and deeply personal as any developed through face-to-face communication. That phenomenon shouldn't surprise us. Throughout history, some of the most profound political discussions and the greatest love affairs have been conducted by people writing to each other. We tend to think that the best communication takes place where people can see and touch each other. But that is not necessarily so. Obviously, there are occasions where physical proximity is necessary, but face-to-face communication often introduces more noise in the system and imposes more limitations on personal expression. Paradoxically, the very technology that threatens to depersonalize our society offers a way to connect people, to restore a sense of community in our lives, to deepen our relationships. At the same time, the advent of the computer and the advanced communication system that it has made possible have raised difficult new questions. What is the appropriate span of control of a manager in a computerized network? What is to be the nature of that supervision? What is the role of middle management when vertical access from the top to the bottom of the organization is made so easy? Will this technology democratize or centralize? What about issues of privacy, loyalty, identity, and secrecy? A life of its own. All these questions arise because technology has literally reinvented us. We are and will be different than we were. For the most part, we don't yet know in which ways those differences will express themselves, just as we did not anticipate the ways in which the automobile changed us. We have always believed that technology is under our control, that is neutral, benign, and that it's only our use of it that is suspect. But such is not the case. Technology develops a life of its own. It's autonomous. As Emerson noted, things are in the saddle and ride mankind. Imagine our trying to rid ourselves of the automobile, the television, or the computer. Impossible. Technology rolls over us like an unstoppable juggernaut, and the possibilities of influencing it are quite limited. Moreover, the consequences of applying technology are likely to be different from our expectations and very often the opposite of our intent. Only by understanding this can managers intelligently apply technology, assess its effects, and be reasonably prepared to cope with the unpredictable eventualities it will cause. And that's the end of Chapter 8, and I've read Chapter 6 and 8 today from Management of the Absurd, and on Thursday I will be reading Part 3, The Paradoxes of Communication, and it will be Chapter 9, The More We Communicate, the Less We Communicate. So, until then, that was easy. See ya